I say that because I kind of look at it as the best kept secret. Um, and it shouldn't be, and we're working to put that to rest with and through you all today. Our European counterparts have been using registered apprenticeship in blue collar, white collar, even gray collar occupations for decades. And it's time for us to really work to expand the model beyond construction and building trades. And to help do that, I'd like to introduce my partner in success, Leslie Philman, who will tell you exactly what we do with registered apprenticeship. Leslie.
Morning, everybody. Very excited to be here. I am trying to get swap the presenter view, and I'm having just one little issue here with trying to do that. So just bear with me for a moment. But I am very excited to be with you all today. Excited to talk with you about registered apprenticeship. Both Laron and I have been with Department of Labor. Laron's been with the Department of Labor for 5+ years. I'm almost at 5 years myself. We promote and develop registered apprenticeship programs throughout the state. Our areas of focus are in industries non-traditional to registered apprenticeship. Most registered apprenticeship programs are in the construction and building trades, and Laron and I's focus is in advanced manufacturing, agriculture, healthcare, IT, and transportation in particular, although we do have programs outside of those fields as well. Really, any industry could be an apprenticeable industry. So registered apprenticeship is kind of one of the best kept secrets for just a career pathway. So we will cover all of that. I'm just going to continue on like this. You'll see the next coming slide, unfortunately, because I can't get access to the other part. So what we are going to cover today is we will talk about the basics of registered apprenticeship. We will also talk about common misconceptions. So, as we have been expanding registered apprenticeship into these different industries, we've had to combat some misunderstandings about registered apprenticeship. So we will cover that. We will also talk about how we develop apprenticeship programs. We will get a little more into the different industries and occupations that fall within those industries. We will also just lightly touch on some funding opportunities that are available to our employer partners. And then we will also talk about how we can partner to promote registered apprenticeship. And again, we'll cover questions at the end, but obviously if you have any questions as time, as we're going through, please feel free to let us know that as well.
So just a little bit more about registered apprenticeship. How about Department of Labor and Industry? Of course, our mission is to ensure that Minnesota's work and living environment are both equitable and healthy and safe. Our mission is to really be seen as a trusted resource and service provider and an impartial regulator. One of the important things to think about are the services that we offer all Minnesotans, and it starts, of course, with OSHA, Occupational Safety and Health. They're responsible for safety and health standards in the workplace. We've got Construction Codes and Licensing Division, which really keeps the Minnesotans safe by enforcing construction-related health and safety codes and licensing laws in new and existing structures or construction. We've got workers' compensation. Workers' compensation is really to make certain that injured workers promptly receive the benefits there and services that they're entitled to. And of course, Labor Standards Division is to make sure that Minnesota workers are properly paid and their workplace rights are protected. Then we've got Pipeline Dual Training, which is another outstanding work-based learning program. And then of course, Registered Apprenticeship, which when we'll get do a deeper dive into apprenticeship, but when we think registered apprenticeship, we really want folks to think subject matter experts. Apprenticeship, there's the term journey worker or journey level attainment. And that's more than anything serves the evidence that someone has gone through all of the competencies that it takes to be considered a subject matter expert. So it really is a very detailed and in-depth way of building expertise throughout your organization. Leslie?
So as we have been going out and promoting registered apprenticeship, again, some of the things that we touch on when we are having these different conversations, much like we're doing with all of you today, we talk about the myths and facts around registered apprenticeship. We share the benefits of registered apprenticeship, the benefits to the worker, the benefits to the company, as well as any intermediary partners. Intermediaries are those individuals or groups that are there to help employers get their programs up and running. We talk about the components and design, the outline of registered apprenticeship, and really emphasizing the fact that because one of the myths that I'll sneak in there right now is that, you know, us being a government agency, you know, that we are kind of dictating how things go, and registered apprenticeship really is an employer-focused program. So the employer is the one who is really making the final decisions on what's included in that program and how they will carry that out. So, but we will talk about all of that as we go through.
So one of the myths, of course, is that registered apprenticeship programs are only in Minnesota's metropolitan area. And prior to COVID-19, Leslie and I traveled every corner of the state to promote and sing the praises of apprenticeship. So we know full well, after having traveled thousands of miles, that registered apprenticeship programs are operating throughout the entire state.
And also that I touched on earlier, that registered apprenticeship programs are only in the construction and building trades. And while they really did they laid the groundwork, they created the foundation for the model, registered apprenticeship really is, it can, as long as it can meet the requirements of the model, really any industry could meet that, could have a registered apprenticeship program.
How about this one, Leslie? Registered apprenticeship programs are only for large companies. Well, large companies benefit substantially from using the registered apprenticeship model in that they've got a uniform and consistent way to onboard and upskill. But we find that small companies, and I'm talking, you know, mom and pop shops, one apprentice here, maybe two apprentices there, benefit substantially because it really is incumbent upon them to make sure they capture the knowledge before it walks out the door, and also to lessen their exposure. I mean, if something happens to one guy or one gal, and you don't have your bench, so quote unquote, stocked with not only talent, but skilled talent your exposure is pretty substantial. So registered apprenticeship really works for both large and small companies.
And here's one more, that registered apprentices will get trained and then leave their employer. And we have found the exact opposite to be the case. Really, because registered apprenticeship as a model and everything that is incorporated within that, we have found that apprentices are more committed and committed on a different level, because the employer has actually made an investment in their development. And it creates other opportunities for the apprentices going through that program as well. So it really is a model that helps. It helps to bring in staff, but it also helps to reduce that turnover as well as increase the productivity.
Because my favorite thing to say regarding that is, what if you don't train them and they stay?
Right?
How about this one? All registered apprenticeship programs involve unions. To your point earlier, we do really owe a great amount of praise and thank you to the unions and other organized labor for setting a foundation, a solid foundation, and really maximizing this model. But the fact is, some registered apprenticeship programs have unions. I would say of the ones that we've registered, Leslie, outside of the construction industry, probably 40% of them have some type of collective bargaining agreement, and the other 60% do not. So either or,
Right.
we are skilled at working with and for union shops, and equally skilled at working with agencies or entities that don't have collective bargaining agreements. So what's in it for employers, workers, and the state of Minnesota? Well, let's talk employers. What is the tremendous benefit that registered apprenticeship brings to you? Well, it allows you to grow your own. As we traveled the entire state, now we do a lot of virtual presentations. We hear the same thing prior to COVID, LaRon and Leslie, we can't find people. Well, it allows you to grow your own workforce, increase your pipeline. Of course, workers produce as they train. Remember, you're still hiring to a certain standard or threshold and or aptitude. And so those folks are productive day one as they walk in the door, and you're giving them the tools to further their career. They're on the payroll and they're making money for you. Improved productivity is another benefit. And I say that because there's this thing called related technical instruction that is instrumental or a big part of registered apprenticeship. And so we're finding that as new workers or existing workers are going to community colleges or other places to get their related instruction, they're bringing those new technologies and ideas back to the shop floor. And we're finding that incumbent workers are picking up on those technologies as well and using them to become more productive. Excuse me. Reduced employee turnover. Leslie talked a little bit about this, and we'll probably talk more about it again. But you're really engaging people at a different level. Relationships drive retention. And one of the core components of a registered apprenticeship program is the mentoring aspect. Therein lies a relationship, which of course goes to that retention that we talk about. You heard me talk about the importance of retaining and transferring the knowledge before it walks out the door. We've got companies that we've worked with, especially in CNC machining and other advanced manufacturing, where they're going to lose 50 to 70% of their workforce in the next couple of years. And it generally takes, 3-4 years to become wholly proficient in some of these occupations. And so now would be the time really to lay that blueprint, that foundation for upskilling the next workforce. Of course, employers have incentive to hire veterans. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but having a veteran being part of an apprenticeship program allows them to access all of their GI funding. So Leslie, let's talk about workers' benefits.
Yeah, so there equally are a number of benefits to the apprentices going through that apprenticeship program. The first being that they are employed. They are from day one an employee of that organization. So they are, as LaRon mentioned, they are contributing and earning a paycheck along the way, right from the very beginning. They do get comprehensive job training. So again, LaRon had mentioned the related training, technical instruction. So that's one of the other kind of key, sort of the sweet sauce of registered apprenticeship, is that not only are you gaining skills and competency around that occupation, you are also getting continuing education that supports that on-the-job training and adds, by the way, to that productivity, because they're learning the in-demand skills and in current time. So they're getting that good knowledge then. They're also getting safety instruction. Again, we are the Department of Labor and Industry, so safety is kind of our thing. So we want to make sure that our apprentices are being trained in a safe fashion. Again, with the wages, as they are learning more, contributing more, their salary should be increasing likewise. Again, they're getting those in-demand skills and competencies. So once they complete that program, they are earning a state and nationally recognized credential, very much on par with a degree. The additional bonus of that, again, is that they have the hands-on experience. It's not just the education. They actually can do the job. So that credential kind of validates that they've reached that proficiency. And they can, for those that are veterans, people transitioning out of the military, they can use their GI benefits for that as well. So again, this model, even as we think about it for the state, is creating a pathway to middle class, quality training, again, safety, and a vibrant economy.
So what is registered apprenticeship? In a couple of words, I suppose it's best summed up by calling it work-based learning, perhaps even skill-based learning. It's an effective model to really recruit, train, and retain your workforce. I want to emphasize the retention and the recruiting aspect of it. When you've got a uniform and consistent way to onboard and upskill people, and when you've been very intentional about laying out a path, it really, I think, is a fertile ground for a higher level of engagement. And that's the old human resources generalist in me coming out. But let's just talk about the basic components of a registered apprenticeship program. It starts with employment from day one. As long as that person is 18 years of age or older, oftentimes we like to say high school diploma or GED, although that's not always the case. And they're full-time employed, and from a labor standards perspective, we'll call full-time employment 32 hours per week, and benefits eligible. That's the key. If they're benefits eligible, you've got the foundation there for someone to go into apprenticeship. Now, keep in mind, apprenticeship is for new workers and for incumbent workers. As long as there's at least 2,000 hours, or basically 1 year of on-the-job training, then you can engage incumbent workers in this model as well. So the on-the-job training, we think about the building trades, carpenters, electricians, and plumbers, so forth and so on. Those apprenticeship programs are often 4 to 5 year programs. But as long as you've got at least 2,000 hours, we'll call it an apprenticeable occupation. Those 2,000 hours need to be supplemented by mentoring, somebody that's going to make sure that apprentice is operating in a safe and effective fashion, getting developmental feedback on a routine basis. The third component of an apprenticeship program is the related instruction. Related technical instruction is the technical and theoretical book learning that supports their day-to-day hands-on activities. That's 144 hours per year, and it can look a lot of different ways. Related instruction, this is a very business-centric model, and we believe that employers know best how to educate / and upskill their workforce. So we'll generally defer to them as long as that curriculum supports what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. It can be e-learning, it can be learning from a community college, it can be a curriculum that the business itself has already developed, or any combination of those things. As long as it's 144 hours per year, or basically 3 hours per week that they're studying their craft, we'll consider it as meeting the competencies for the occupation. Let's see here. Then we've got a progressive wage scale. We don't dictate wages from the Department of Labor and Industry. However, we really work to engage businesses and sponsors that pay what we call family sustaining wages. In the metro area, that's slightly more than $15.50 an hour. But if it's a family sustaining wage, then we'll look at it as an apprenticeable occupation. And then finally, there's that credential that Leslie talked about that evidences some person has finished the journey and they are a subject matter expert and really in a position to reach back, coach, develop, and train other folks. So it really is, I think, a highly effective way to recruit, to train, because you've got the uniform and consistency of a very well chronicled program. And then your investment in those folks, as well as partnering them with a mentor and creating those working relationships, is a great way to retain your workforce as well. Leslie, how do we do it?
So when we are working with a potential employer sponsor, it can be something as simple as going through the job description. Many times when we are working with employers, we likely may already have an apprenticeship program created for that particular occupation. So we would simply start with that program outline as a template. If we don't have a program in Minnesota, we look to the U.S. Department of Labor in their kind of Dropbox or database of programs to see if there's an existing outline. And if there's not, then we start from scratch and we start from that job description and build from there. And what we are working to create is the standard of apprenticeship, that official document that outlines all of those different components that Laurent just went through are embedded in that standard. So that's what we are working to compile all the information for. And so we do that through a series of conversations. We're in a virtual environment now, so we do a lot of this via Teams or Zoom or just a simple conference call. So we have a number of those meetings just to gather all of that information. Once we have gathered everything that we need, we kind of do a final walkthrough, and then we submit the final standard draft to our director for that final approval. And once a program has been approved, within the first 30 days, we like to see apprentices actually registered into the program and get started in the program. And we also, we schedule some follow-up conversations, some check-in conversation, a 30, 60, 90-day check-in, really just to make sure that we've got everything, everything is running the way that the employer wants. The apprentices kind of cycling through everything the way that they need. If we need to tweak the program in any way, we can do that during those check-in times. But we also do an annual review as well. But we're always available to the employer for whatever technical assistance that they need throughout the life of their apprenticeship program. So then, this is, again, just another pathway to employment and another way to get people trained and upskilled in a particular occupation.
So just real quick, COVID has really taken a toll on everything and everybody. So if you look at the 2020 bar, you'll see a shaded indicate the compromise, but look at the trend. And we're really proud, we say modestly, but proudly, of the progress we've made in really engaging people of color, women, and veterans. And we want to expand this so that more folks can take advantage of the model. But you see the almost double growth in engaging underrepresented and underutilized populations. And we've been very intentional by maintaining strong relationships with faith-based, community-based organizations. If it's out there, we really work to engage them and make sure they know of the benefits of apprenticeship and how we can be a meaningful connector to allow them or help them take advantage of this very lucrative model.
And this is also, you know, this is a good time and good conversation that we're having with all of you as well to continue to make this model something that is available to everyone. And these are the different industries that we currently have apprenticeship programs in. So again, as you can see, of the bulk of the programs available are within the construction and building trades and utilities, but we have been over the last few years expanding this model into other industries, and we'll talk more about the specific occupations shortly.
So there are, you know, you're going to hear a lot more about an equitable economic recovery. And that really means engaging folks that have been traditionally left out of the apprenticeship model. Not only do Leslie and I, and we've got an entire team of 8 field reps that really work to promote and develop, emphasis on develop registered apprenticeship programs. But we do the heavy lifting. All the business has to do is really come to us and say, we'd like more information about how to get started, and we will put together the standards from start to finish for and on behalf of business. It used to take a year to go through this process. Now within 60 days, we can have a program up and running with and for business. But not only do we do the heavy lifting, we also put our money behind our conversation. And so there are a lot of grants that will help folks engage the registered apprenticeship model. You'll see Minnesota Apprenticeship Initiative. We're coming off of that grant here. It sunsets in September of 2021. But that was a $5 million initiative to bring on 1,000 new apprentices, and we far exceeded that goal, by the way. Then you've got Apex, $1.8 million in funding. There's MNRA, Minnesota Registered Apprenticeship Expansion Initiative, which is another $1.3 billion. That's an active grant. And then we've got MNSERA, Minnesota Capacity Expansion of Registered Apprenticeship Initiative. I know they all kind of run together and kind of focus on expanding, but that grant is out there as well. So we've got a lot of money available to businesses All they need to really do is reach out to us and say they're interested and they'd like to move forward, and we'll take care of them.
So Laron, for the sake of time, I'll just kind of advance. This is just going a little more into detail for the for two of the grants, but just wanting to save some time for questions too. We'll kind of pass over the detail of these, and in further conversations, if you want more information on any of the grants that we have available, we're open for that. So one of the things that we wanted to touch on too, just to highlight, is within the construction and building trades, these are, there's actually 27 plus, there's more than 27, but there's 27 main occupations or trades that fall into those categories. So many of which you're probably familiar with. Everybody's heard of a carpenter, hopefully. And there's boiler makers, brick and tile layers, cement mason, finishing trades, which are like painters and glass workers, iron workers, the operating engineers, the ones that get in there with all the fun equipment, the big equipment, pipe fitters, sheet metal workers, and then some. So there's a number of different other options that fall within the construction trades. And then in utilities, there are power line workers, plant attendants, relay technicians, and gas fitters. Laron, how about our non-traditional?
Well, our niche is, and our, I would say our huge area of success have really rested in advanced manufacturing, transportation, and healthcare. We're getting a foothold in IT and agriculture, but these are all programs that Leslie and I developed in the last 4 years when we exceeded that goal of 1,000 apprentices, registering 1,000 new apprentices during that time. But we'll make these slides available, and just know that if you have an occupation that doesn't fit on here, we'll still work to develop as long as it's apprenticeable. Leslie?
Yeah, and so then let's talk about how we can partner together. One of the main ways really is just ensuring that people know about registered apprenticeship. Again, this tends to be one of those things that is just one of the best kept secrets because people just don't know what's available to them. And that's been Laron and I's role really is making sure we get out there and talking with a number of groups. So again, we really do appreciate this opportunity to talk and partner with you all. So one is really just, and we did send some additional handouts. So there is a document that we shared that you'll get after this presentation that kind of gives some different resources. So in terms of sharing the opportunity, there are a few web pages that would be helpful resources, not only for you, just to kind of look a little more into what we have available, but to share with those that you might be having those conversations with. So your clients, business partners. Really, it's sharing the benefits of the program. Being that meaningful connector. So as whether it is an employer or a potential apprentice, a job seeker, just making that connection with us. Ask them if they've heard or considered registered apprenticeship as an option. And whether or not they have, we are available to kind of fill in the gaps there, to provide the detailed information. We just simply need your help to make that connection. From the, as Laron kind of touched on, from the employer standpoint, this is really supporting that enhancement of diversity and inclusion on many levels. But also, you know, for that individual, it's again providing a link to another potential job opportunity. So this is Laron and I's information, as well as a couple of our connections, our partners for the grants that couple of the grants that we have currently. But we would love to open it up for questions. So Anne, Alyssa, or Marcy.
Absolutely. There have been some good questions that have come through. Am I having a little echo? So I apologize. Appreciate you going through all that and some great opportunities with apprenticeships. And we did put some of those resources that you referred to in the chat. So if you're familiar with Zoom, should be able to click on those PDFs and do a save as. We will also send these out post-training as well. So you have them if for some reason you can't grab them through the chat. So that's fine too. So I know we had a number of different questions. I think some of them might be addressed a little bit with some of the resources, but I know Mike was asking about what's the best way to kind of have some talking points with employers and students to promote this. And I know you have some good resources within your brochures to kind of talk about apprenticeships and the benefits for both, but any other additional comments that you would have about that?
Well, I like to, especially when we're talking to businesses, ask them about their workforce needs and really ask them whether or not they've considered registered apprenticeship, and focus on 3 specific things as a way to grow their pipeline or grow their own. The second talking point would be a uniform and consistent way to upskill their workforce. After all, what Leslie and I really work to do is capture their best practices. We capture the business's best practices and help align them with statutes so that it forms up into a registered apprenticeship program that's in full compliance. And our job is to make sure that they meet those thresholds. And then finally, a way to retain talent. And I dare say, enhance a culture. We find that a lot of apprenticeship programs that have strong mentoring components, those apprentices, once they journey out or graduate, are also looking to become mentors. We found that university at Fairview, at Metro Transit. So it's a great way to enhance your culture. So those 3 things I think are the primary talking points. Ask businesses what they're trying to accomplish, ask them how they're addressing them, and then get them in touch with us. Leslie and I will be more than happy to serve as your mouthpiece.
And I know I did put your information in the chat too. And you also stress the equity piece, and equity is such a big thing right now that people are looking at, and how much that can really enhance employers' work culture and their efforts there. So I think you had addressed the number of hours, but somebody had just to make sure we say it again. Somebody had mentioned about the number of classrooms hours that are required. Was it 114? Did I hear that right?
144.
44, excuse me.
Yeah,
my retention
really
is never good.
You know, so it really kind of averages, and how employers choose to administer the related instruction piece. You know, so there are a number of different ways that employers might do that. They may have people coming on site and having classes on site. The apprentice might be going to a college, so they might have adjustment for their hours for that. Sometimes it might be on the apprentice's own time that they're going to take these classes. So there's really multiple varieties of how they receive that. But on average, that 144 works out to about 2.5, 3 hours per week of that time that they're in class.
Great, yeah, that makes it sort of manageable. The next question was, can the apprenticeship program also be accessed by individuals with formal training education in a trade area?
Yes. So if I think if I'm understanding the question correctly, depending on a program has to have that minimum of 2,000 hours, roughly a year long. But LaRon mentioned there might be instances where the apprenticeship program is 2-3 years long. And if someone is coming into that program and they've already completed some training or they have some experience in that particular area, they can earn credit, get credit for that previous training or previous experience.
Fantastic. And then Crystal's asking, what resources are available for current sponsors to maybe update their current apprenticeships?
Yeah, well, and actually we're going through a process where with more attention being paid on diversity, equity, and inclusion, we're going back and updating a lot of standards or diversity statements, if you will. And it's an opportune time to just look at or review the work process schedule and competencies and refresh those to make sure they're consistent with what that business is currently sees as their best practices. So anytime is a good time to engage us or ask us to help a business update and refresh their standards.
And we also do that on a regular basis through those check-ins that we have as well. So whether it's the 30, 60, 90 days after that program has been developed, we are for sure doing it on an annual basis with the annual reviews.
Oh, there's a lot of good questions in here. Melissa actually asked, it's hard to know where to start when a person we serve is interested. Do we start by contacting the employer on your list, or do we try to recruit a new employer to start a program? What's the best recommendation you have there?
I would say both. So if you're talking with an employer who you think this might be a good option for them, start the conversation at that point. And maybe another good practice is to just make that a common question as you are building your employer network. Just make that a regular part of the conversation. Ask that question. Have you considered registered apprenticeship as a recruitment and training model?
Great idea. I know Laura plugged in a link. That's she's saying another great resource around construction careers. And David is asking about, what about apprenticeships for adults to middle-aged workers who are looking to change careers?
Apprenticeship is that flexible model. Keep in mind that all it really is work-based or skill-based training. And so for someone who's already been in the workforce, but is looking to bridge an occupation, it's an ideal model. Let's just say I created a program where they were taking folks from the loading dock and making them, they were working with circuit boards and soldering. So it's a great bridge mechanism. It's just a great tool for anybody, as long as they've got at least 2,000 hours of training that they need to do in a given occupation or to establish expertise in certain competencies. It's pretty universal. And again, as Leslie talked about, it's a living model. So as your best practices or as the dynamics of a job change, we can change those in the standards so that it fits anybody that you want to put into that system.
Fantastic. Alyssa has we've got a lot of good questions in here. Alyssa has a question too, to just follow up on some people we serve don't consider apprenticeships because they don't fully understand what the occupations entail. Do you have any recommendations as the best ways for people to explore those possibilities?
Well, one is just to connect them to us, because we are happy to have that conversation, to at least start the conversation. And then if there is a specific occupation that they have questions on, we can connect them to those employers to have that conversation as well, or just other resources that we have that they can have that conversation.
Excellent. Hillary has one that I've gone out to everybody to see that. So Hillary said she's working with an individual that's going through the application process for an apprenticeship training program, and that person will be taking an aptitude test at the end of the month. What are the recommendations if this person does not meet the cutoff score?
Well, and so just to, I would be curious if it's an actual registered apprenticeship or an apprenticeship program, and there's a difference. Because any employer can have an apprenticeship program, right? It's just it's a model. So first question would be, are they actually a registered apprenticeship program with the state of Minnesota? Obviously, because then they have to meet all of those guidelines to be registered. But any employer can have their own, what they call an apprenticeship program, right? So in terms of those, if it's an employer that has their own apprenticeship training, we wouldn't necessarily be able to help much for that, but we certainly can provide that additional information for programs that are registered through the state of Minnesota.
Great. And Mike kind of made a comment, more of a, this would be interesting, where he goes, I wonder what jobs through state of Minnesota could benefit from an apprenticeship training program.
Well, we actually are very excited that we have partnered with Minute. So the Minnesota IT Services has an apprenticeship program. So, and they were the first state agency to have a registered apprenticeship program. So we would love and are open to creating more.
That is great news. So Nancy's asking the question, are employers okay with support services being involved, like placement vendors with VR being involved in this situation?
Yes. Yeah.
As a matter of fact, we got a number of grants that encourage employers to offer support services, reimburse on a reimbursement basis. So the whole wraparound idea of engaging folks is something that's near and dear to our hearts, and we really encourage employers to embrace it as well.
Question, do you have any apprenticeships for people with weak academic skills, such as someone who is like an ESL learner?
Well, so for programs, so people still have to meet whatever the qualifications are for that particular role. However, this is the opportunity that we've got with community-based organizations to help kind of provide that pre-work to help them get to that level of qualification for that role. And there certainly are, and some of the grants actually that we've been working with have created those opportunities so that it's ensuring people go through, I mean, we don't like to call it pre-apprenticeship, but that's essentially what it is, or career readiness, those kinds of programs that will help get people to the point of being able to transition into the apprenticeship programs.
We're getting close to time, so we'll take 2 more questions quick. One is, who's responsible for providing accommodations in the apprenticeship program?
The employer. Yep. So the employer owns the program, so they would be just like any other employment, any other kind of employment. The employer is the one who's responsible.
Or from John, is when you talk about transportation opportunities, does that include CDL training or over-the-road truck drivers?
So there are apprenticeships for over-the-road truck drivers. Here in Minnesota, our only apprenticeship that involves CDL training right now is coach operator with Metro Transit, and those are Class B commercial driver's licenses. But if a business comes to us and they indicate that they want to develop a program for over-the-road truckers, we'll work to engage that.
You know, and this is where it really would be beneficial to engage employer partners, because with any opportunity, we have to have a program on the back end for people to go into. So we really are looking to expand and connect with more employers so that we can create more opportunities for individuals to transition to.
Hi, this is Alyssa Klein. Holy cow. Maybe I'll mute everyone and that will, okay. Anyway, I'm jumping in to close this out. Actually, Marcy, you're still there. You could have. But anyway, I want to thank everyone for being here. I look at this, and I know Marcy and Daisha look at this as kind of step one. Certainly we've done things in apprenticeship, but really it's step one of kind of a refresh and getting going with how we can support more with more of the folks that we serve in entering into registered apprenticeship. I know on the VRS side, what Marcy and I were talking about was if you are going to help somebody looking into apprenticeship, you've got those questions to include Marcy too, because we all want to learn as an agency together. So Marcy definitely will be that good resource too, so she can learn along the way and we can help track some of those successes. So make sure you reach out. I think that's it. We're after 11. So thank you so much, LaRon and Leslie. It's so fun to partner with you. Looking forward to the future together.